The nebula Eden. This nebula was composed of the angels of the apocalypse, was the scourge of the demons, and the eternal enemies of the demon world. The guardians of the celestial world, the angels, who didn't fear any evil in this world. However, there was something that the angels of this fearsome Eden hated. Elder, in Eden you are fully prepared and bid your time before the battle. It was Metatron's ordinance time. Today the one in charge of the lecture was the commander of the Red Cosmos, Jophiel. We urge you not to fall for the demon's two-faced war tactics. Gabriel tapped the floor with his heel and frowned. Oh, why must it be that person today? There were thousands of low-ranked angels in the training ground of Eden. The archangels like Gabriel were positioned at the forefront as teaching assistants. Lily Pin of Aquarius, Gabriel. Guardian of Youths and Travel, Raphael. Friend of Justice and Harmony, Ragel. Apart from the archangel on duty, most of the top-ranking constellations of Eden were assembled. Jophiel's mental training had already been going on for an hour. Gabriel secretly yawned and looked around at his colleagues with languid eyes, only to notice something strange. Hey, where's Uriel? Raphael, who was nodding off on the cloud, replied while fixing his curly hair. She's being detained. Detained? She's being told off by the scribe, don't you know? What did she do? Raphael borrowed the power of the wind to speak like it was annoying. Gabriel's eyes widened. What? Really? Uriel? Yes. She's banned from broadcasting for 3 years. That Uriel was going to be confined for 3 years? Gabriel laughed at the unexpected news. For the time being, the broadcast bulletin board will be clean. The ordinance ended after 30 minutes. Metatron dismissed the low-grade angels and called the archangels separately. Scribe of Heaven, Metatron, had gray hair that went down to his waist, and his expression seemed tired today. It was because he was busy trying to prevent the possibility of Armageddon. Metatron pushed up his thin-framed glasses and spoke. Thank you for the trouble, Jophiel. It was a good presentation. Jophiel nodded. Metatron looked around at the archangels and asked, Uriel didn't come? Didn't you detain her? Otherwise she'd be here. The other archangels giggled at Gabriel's words. However, Metatron didn't laugh. The archangels exchanged looks with each other. There was no angel here who didn't know that Uriel was a headache for the scribe. The first one to speak was the archangel Ragel, who had faint freckles on his cheeks. Excuse me, scribe. Isn't 3 years of detainment too much? Recently, Uriel has become quite bright due to the broadcast. For the constellations who had to endure the boring years, the meaning of the live broadcast was immense. Some angels called the live stream broadcasting the only drug allowed in Eden. What are you saying, Ragel? Do you know how many times the scribe let that watch? Ragel's expression hardened at Gabriel's words. Gabriel, insulting a fellow angel is a felony. Did I say something wrong? When she was bored, she picked up a demon's neck and did something strange. Gabriel! It was Metatron who calmed down the tense atmosphere. I will decide how to deal with Uriel. The sublime aura rising from Metatron caused all the excited angels to close their mouths. As the surroundings became silent, Metatron brought up the main point. In connection to the Demon World Convention, I'm going to give you a new assignment. The Demon World Convention. The expressions of the archangels became tense. The balance between Eden and the demon world had been shaken by the recent armed conflict in the 73rd Demon Realm. We need an archangel to monitor the ruler of the 73rd Demon Realm, the Demon King of Salvation. Confusion filled the angels' faces. Gabriel asked in a sharp voice, Wait, isn't that originally Uriel's mission? And what does it have to do with the Demon World Convention? It is relevant. Now that Uriel is being detained, other archangels need to do her work. Metatron's gaze moved across the archangels. Raphael had Doctrine's tour next week, and Ragel is scheduled to visit Vedas, so the mission... The scribe's eyes finally stopped on one archangel. Me? In the days after the party members enjoyed a sudden luxury. Dokshashi, can I accept something like this? I bought it for Hyung Sungshi. Kim Dokcha bought clothes or items for the party members every day on the Dokubi bag, as if compensation for his absence in the meantime. The kids were particularly excited. "Hey, look at this, Shin Yu-sung. I received it as well." Shin Yu-sung and Lee Gil-young laughed and ran through the streets while covered in accessories bought by Kim Dokcha. Jung Hee-won saw the scene and laughed. "The kids look like a Christmas tree." The two children were sitting on Lee Hyung-sung's big shoulders. The same was true for Lee Hyung-sung. He was excited about the new shield he received from Kim Dokcha. "Three fools," she muttered as she looked around and saw Lee Ji-hee approaching while wearing a triangular gimbap-like helmet on her head. If the other three were like a Christmas tree, she was like a 3-tier cake. "Do you have a good relationship with Dokcha Ajishi these days?" "I have belatedly realized the importance of colleagues." Lee Ji-hee narrowed her eyes at Jung Hee-won's reaction. "Uni, perhaps you haven't received anything?" "I don't need it." In fact, Kim Dokcha had visited Jung Hee-won several times. However, he didn't give her any items and only taught her a few training methods, as well as telling her about hidden pieces. She told him that they were things she could do without him, and Kim Dokcha's expression was still vivid in her mind. She was going to give Lee Ji-hee some honey when someone poked her shoulder. She looked back and saw the tired Kim Dokcha. "Ah, Dokcha-shi." Kim Dokcha had dark circles on his face as he held out something towards Jung Hee-won. It's a new suit. It'll be more comfortable for you." Jung Hee-won accepted the clothes in a daze. It was a blue-black special suit with a large cloak. She had seen it at the exchange, but gave up because it was too expensive. "The clothes are too expensive. I still have enough." Kim Dokcha silently shook his head. Jung Hee-won saw his unknown facial expression and recalled a memory from a long time ago. During the days at Chungmuro, she received an outfit from Kim Dokcha. At the time, it was a rag. The Constellation Bald General of Justice is disappointed with Incarnation Jung Hee-won. "You agreed to be my sword. I should do at least this much for you." Kim Dokcha said these words and instantly walked away like he had something else happening. Jung Hee-won stared at Kim Dokcha's back and touched the special uniform in her hands. Lee Ji-hee grinned from next to her. "Uni's mouth. What?" "Nothing. I just found something from the corners of your mouth. Uni, if you don't like it, then exchange it with my helmet. That suit's really romantic." "I don't want to." She looked closer and saw a pattern on the suit that was similar to Lee Hyung-sung's shield. "Made by Yangu-san?" Jung Hee-won wasn't fluent in English, scratched her head, and gave up reading. In any case, it was good. "By the way, why is Ajishi suddenly doing this? The person who sold food for money." "I don't know. He might be plotting something strange like before." It certainly wasn't strange if it was Kim Dokcha. He gave her such a good item that he would definitely put her to tremendous use. Jung Hee-won looked at the suit and felt like an office worker who received a salary advance. She was discussing with Lee Ji-hee how to wear the coat more stylishly when someone appeared and passed her like a ghost. "Sangashi, what's going on?" "Huh? Ah, yes, it's nothing." Yu Sung-ah, who was staring blankly into space, reacted with surprise. Her pupils were empty. Jung Hee-won realized that something was strange and tried to speak, but Lee Ji-hee was one step faster. "Aha, I understand. Sung-ah Uni hasn't received an item." Jung Hee-won poked Lee Ji-hee's ribs and she let out a light shriek. Yu Sung-ah smiled helplessly. "I just have many thoughts these days. Hee-won-shi, that's a wonderful outfit." Yes, Dokcha-shi gave it. I think it's too much to wear it." "I think it suits you well." "Is that so? Thank you." Jung Hee-won scratched her head. There was a shining bracelet that hadn't been seen before on Yu Sung-ah's wrist. The mood became awkward, and Jung Hee-won asked awkwardly, Right. How is Dokcha-shi lately?" "Dokcha-shi?" Yu Sung-ah's expression asked what she meant. Jung Hee-won, who might have been misinformed, started speaking gibberish. I just wanted to know if the two of you are doing well." Yu Sung-ah cocked her head to one side and muttered, I think it's the same as when we were in the company." It was similar to when they were in the company. It was a difficult response for a hopeful observer. Lee Ji-hee whispered to Jung Hee-won, "Didn't I tell you before? There's nothing between them. Dokcha Ajishi's taste doesn't go that way. I understand why my sponsor likes you. By the way, has your master woken up?" "Not yet. I heard it would be a few more days." In the distance, Kim Dokcha seemed to be talking to himself as he headed towards the ward. Is there something to give? The clock tower was on the verge of completion. The boisterous laughter of the party members could be heard. Gong Pildu was dissecting something like a machine gun, while Han Myungo was testing a new prosthetic leg. Without knowing why, Jung Hee-won felt overwhelmed. In any case, the party was all gathered now. They would soon return to Earth and go through the hellish scenarios again. Even so, Jung Hee-won was afraid. Jung Hee-won watched the sunset from the clock tower and recalled the words she heard in the theater dungeon. I wish to see the novel's epilogue. At the time, the Kim Dokja who said these words seemed very lonely. She didn't know what he meant at the time, but now she felt like she knew a bit. Now one thing was clear. When the epilogue came, Kim Dokja wouldn't be alone. It was a few days after the party ended. The constellations present in the industrial complex started to leave one by one. I went to see the constellations off and found 2 flowers in the chest pocket of my coat. What is this? It was a pair of red cosmos and a lily. It wasn't a very suitable combination. Did the kids sue it? I took care of the flowers and headed towards the square. Some constellations had already passed through the portal. Among those leaving were the ones who signed a special contract with the Kim Dokja's company Nebula, including the old man in front of me. It looks like you're preparing for a war. You don't have to be so impatient. In the scenario, it's always war. The mass production maker chuckled at my words. Don't be senseless. I want you to be different from the other constellations. Thank you for the help. I smiled and bowed my head. The mass production maker opened the door of the car before stopping to look at me. There is one final thing I want to ask. Yes, feel free to ask. The mass production maker didn't immediately answer the question. Instead, he pulled out a cigarette and mumbled. Have you ever thought about exactly what is? He turned on his lighter and touched the end of the cigarette to the flame. The mass production maker sighed and blew smoke out before continuing. Is it the place we want to reach, or the place destiny is leading us to? Is it a place, a life, or a space? Perhaps the mass production maker had thought about this question countless times. Finally, he wouldn't have found the answer. The certain thing is that it's the end of the story. Sometimes I find your calmness amazing. I'm nervous as well. I felt it at the time of the Gourmet Association, but you're not as good as lying as you think. The mass production maker laughed like a child. Then I'm asking you, is your really the final chapter? The words broke through my guard. I reflexively shut my lips. The mass production maker waited patiently for my answer. I finally opened my mouth once the mass production maker's cigarette was burned halfway through. I don't know where the story will take me. However, I'm sure that the place I want to go is the final chapter. He continued to listen after I finished. It was as if my story was still ongoing. Once the remaining cigarette had been burned, the mass production maker laughed. I hope I'm on that last page with you. Go carefully, old man. Be careful. There was a light engine sound, and the mass production maker's car slipped into the portal. The other constellations also disappeared into the portal. The portal closed, and ominous sparks filled the sky. I watched the sparks and touched the petals in my pocket. Now the remaining time was 3 days. Soon, the most important story of the industrial complex would begin.